Hello and welcome to the Survival to Triumph show. It's episode 11 this week. I can't believe it. 11 episodes already. My name is Laura Hill. I'm from Swansea in Wales. And if you've never seen the show before, I started it just to show others that no matter what you've been through in life, you can get through it. And I bring on a different person every week to hopefully inspire you with their journeys of survival to triumph. This evening, we've got a lovely guest this week, Julie Newton, and she's from not too far away. She's from Cwmbran in South Wales. Welcome, Julie.
Welcome, and thank you for just giving me this amazing opportunity, because it's an amazing thing to take the focus and attention off ourselves and share stories, journeys, gifts, inspiration, whatever, with other people, and it just gives us that heartwarming feeling. So I'm grateful to be here with you on your show, Laura, and hopefully show how I've gone from survival to triumph with myself and my daughter.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming on, because it wouldn't be possible without people like yourself willing to come on and reveal themselves to the public, which is not an easy thing to do. It's quite nerve-wracking. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Are you married? Have you got children? What do you do for a living? Just tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, so currently I'm doing coaching myself. I found this from my journey of survival and going forward helping other people. So my background is in work, is coaching for sensitive women, and just helping with getting back on your feet, emotional stuff. I'm a single parent with 3 children, but they are all a bit older now. So I have a 26-year-old, a 21-year-old, and also a 17-year-old, my daughter, that I'm going to be speaking about on this episode.
Lovely. And I'm a single mum too, mother of one who's 15. So we got the single mums rocking it tonight.
Yeah.
So your youngest daughter, who's 17, has got the diabetes. Now I know there's 2 types, type 1 and type 2, but I have no idea which one is the insulin one and which one. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because some of us might not know, like myself.
Yeah, so basically the difference is the type 1, a lot of it is diet related, and that can come on any time in life. Also type 1 can actually come on any time in life. However, it's kind of like you've got the gene, but how it was explained when I was finding out and discovering about my daughter's diabetes was that it's basically caused by a virus, and the virus actually impacts the immune system. So where you have the white blood cells that are protecting the body, this virus is quite a clever virus, and it basically tricks the white blood cells that are protecting the body to actually attack the pancreas. And so once the pancreas is attacked after about a year, it's actually not functioning well, and that's why you need to start using the insulin to apply it in different ways, in different forms, and that is really the difference between type 1 and type 2. So type 2, I think, if done with the right medical care, can be reversed, but type 1 is more of a prolonged, ongoing condition that is permanent, really, But there have been cases I have heard of that people have overcome them, and there have been miracles. So there is that as well.
There's always a miracle that can happen. You often hear, well, you don't often hear, sometimes you hear of different people, overcoming things. So how old was your daughter when you realized something was wrong, and what made you think that something was wrong?
So it was quite a traumatic experience at the time. I realized that she was ill, but having 3 children and being a single parent, I knew that it wasn't the average cold or flu or virus. So I took her to the doctors, and her heart was beating extremely fast. I knew at that time she was going to the toilet a lot more. She didn't have a great appetite, but she lost her appetite. So there was a lot of signs, but I didn't know as a parent what that was. So I was quite ignorant to what diabetes was at the time. And so when I took her on the Monday to the doctor said, bring her back on the Wednesday. And I said, but she's saying she's got this bad stomach. And the doctor said, well, at the end of the day, you know, all children do that. And I said, well, she's not trying to get out of school. She actually enjoys school. So I was kind of going back and forth with the doctor. And then he said, oh, well, you know, young children, they catch things, it builds their immune system up. Bring her back on Wednesday. So Monday evening, she was just getting worse. I was trying Calpol, all the things I knew as a parent that I could help her with. I was giving her a little bit of Reiki because I do that as well if she was feeling unwell, and just trying to comfort her. But by the morning, I just knew she was just flopped. She was basically unconscious. So wow. I phoned my mum because I didn't drive at the time, and she took us to the hospital. And thank goodness for the nurse in the hospital. She was absolutely amazing. She came out from the reception because I went straight in the adult emergency. I was just rushing where I could. And she pricked her finger to test her blood in a little room. And then she said she's diabetic. And I didn't know what that meant. Wow. So she rushed her into the adult emergency. And at this time, I think I was in shock because I felt like I just wanted to pass out. Because I just remember memories of the last time being there. I watched my dad pass away, so I was kind of in a bit of a shock. But I'm a very strong person as well, so I wanted to kind of stay there as well, for my daughter. Yeah. So they was, put in all different things in her, testing her. And this was how it first come about, really. This is how it started. But it kind of went on for about a week. So all I was told for the first couple of days was they was testing her every half an hour, saying we don't know if she's going to live or die. So I was really
wow.
I was really like in that place of shock, I think, more than anything. And then when it came to it and she started coming around, my son came in to visit, and I kind of had a bit of guilt there as well, being a single parent, not, my family are great, they're supportive, but I'm very independent and I do everything myself. So his dad was taking care of him, but that was actually a past violent relationship and someone that actually mentally manipulated me a lot. And I could see that my son didn't want to be with him, but I didn't have the control to do much about it, because the nurses said that unless I had some kind of court order, I couldn't stop him coming in. Wow. So I had to just leave that at where it was, because I had to learn and be trained how to do injections. And every time I was doing the injections, I was just feeling tremendous guilt, like putting, these things with my daughter. But at the same time, I knew that this was keeping her alive. So there was a lot going on, and I didn't sleep for a whole week. So I think I built up a lot of stuff within my body at that time.
Gosh. Yeah. Wow, there's so much there. Let's take it back a little bit. So let's go. So your daughter was 7?
She was 7, yeah.
She was a little girl, like, okay, 7 years of age, ill in hospital, and they're telling the nurse was quick thinking. You had, I guess, mother's instinct. You knew, this happens. we've had my friend Annalise on the show, her daughter had cancer, and then I was telling about my experience, and my mum had the mother's instinct thing with me. So it's a real thing. I don't care what anybody says. We know when our babies, when our, they are not, we just know there's something wrong. So well done for pushing that, and that nurse, oh, hats off to her. Yeah, and then you're there, and you're being told that, so they keep her in, obviously, because they're checking her.
Yeah.
And you're being told that she could die.
Yeah, it went on for a few days, but then at the end of the week, they and she's such a stubborn, I mean, it's funny looking back on it now, she's such a stubborn person. She definitely gets it from me. And so they wanted her to have this potassium, because she didn't have anything left in the stomach because she hadn't eaten.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took a lot of promises to get her to taste this, because it was burning her stomach. So obviously she was feeling uncomfortable when she was taking it in. But we did persuade her in the end for horse riding lessons, because she loves animals.
Right.
God, yeah.
Yeah. I think before you become a parent, you're like, I'm not going to be one of those parents who bribe their children. I think we all have done it, haven't we? The horse riding, bless her. So did she get to do that when she was better?
She did. I mean, it's only recently that she stopped, but she did go, to college to do animal care. She does, she got many years out of that. So yeah, she was fantastic.
Well done for milking it. Good girl. So after a week, you how long in hospital? A week, is it?
Yeah, it was around about a week for that, yeah. And
then you sent home, I assume, with the syringes and...
Yeah. I think I kind of had another bit of a shocker there, because I was kind of in a relationship kind of thing with someone at the time, and I got home, and because I'm a strong person, I held my tears in for a whole week. I didn't sleep, but I felt, I mean, I know that it's good to release and cry, but I think I was just brought up in such a way to be strong that I didn't want to cry in front of anyone. So I kept that going for a week. And when I got home, it was like, oh, I needed to release. But when I got home, the person I was seeing at the time sat across the table. I saw him come, and he said, because he had a few kids, he said, right, we need to work out what are we going to get for the kids for Christmas and all this. And my head was like, I need to deal with one thing at a time. And that relationship ended up coming to an end. So yeah, I was single once again. Totally single again. Yeah.
You have to go through a relationship break up in the middle of all this then.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was like everything was upside down, because I was going to start doing a business as well. I had one client, and it was like the first client. I just rented the space. I was just learning. I just did what was it? Reflexology. There was a couple of courses I was doing. I just did anatomy and physiology, passed the first half of it, but of course I just gave it all up to train and care for my daughter, because I had to be there for her,
Yeah, of course, because you're the only carer.
Yeah.
With the insulin and everything, were you worried, like, if you got a dose wrong, or did you have any sort of situations where you had to rush off to hospital again, or?
With the diabetes team, to be really honest with them, they gave sheets to her, gave us sheets so I could work out the ratios. I mean, she's independent now, but at the time I did all that. And hand on heart, I'm really bad at math. And so that was so stressful that I had to make sure that I had to get it right, and just doing the injections, making sure that there was no air bubbles in it, because when there's air bubbles, that can cause. So it's like every detail, I was making sure every detail was right at first, and it is a bit stressful because you want to make sure that she has enough. And going back to the question, did she go to hospital? Yes, she's been many times, and like jumping forward, I ended up, I tried to go back to work and gave it up because she ended up in hospital 5 times, and she was in such a bad condition with the bloods being so high out of stress, that I had to completely take her out of school and again give up work. So it's been a long continuous journey, and we've both been growing in strength during it.
Wow, hats off to you. And I mean, when you just said that statement like willy-nilly, where she had to come out of school and had to give up that work, that's a huge thing for anyone. Anybody's been made redundant, lost their job, how stressful that is, how you worry about finances, and especially when you're a single mum, you've got all that burden on your shoulders, never mind caring for somebody, and then they're not in school, so you're not getting a break. So then were you doing homeschooling yourself then, or?
No, well, what I actually did is I looked for a course online, and they had like online learning, so we did a little bit of that, and then I tried to get her into college. I did go to try and fight with the school, and I changed the school, and then there was still issues, so I went to try and get the funding that was in the school to go into college. It didn't work, but in the end I got her there. And through all this, and from the start of the doctors, when I began this story, if I hadn't gone through that experience, I wouldn't be strong enough to turn around. Like if I go to the pharmacy and they've not got like some vials or something, and I know she's running out, I'll say, I need this, and if you haven't got this, I'm going to stay here until you have got something for me to go home with, because I'm not letting my daughter suffer. And I am a lot stronger in that way, whereas I was very shy, and I am still an introvert, but I didn't speak up for myself as I do now. So yeah,
I'd never think that you were an introvert, to be fair, so well disguised, well played. So you become more assertive and resilient, isn't it, when you go through things?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what about giving up work? Like how did that make you feel then? Because like you kind of you lose your identity a little bit, don't you, when you haven't got work to go to and you're in the house and the 4 walls are coming in on you, and it gets a bit claustrophobic sometimes. How did you manage and cope with that?
Yeah, because I mean, I've worked since I come out of school, since I was 16. I've probably worked in the majority of industries you can work in, but I've obviously been in and out because of scenarios. But the last job that the one that I gave up at that time, when the scenario with her being in hospital 5 times, I obviously had to put her health first, and I was caring in a nursing home at the time, but they was very supportive, and they even bought me flowers as I left and thanked me for my service and said that I could always go back. But I was very grateful to the staff there and for the job, but at the same time it just wasn't something I could do. But as a gift, I've learned that being self-employed, I love being self-employed, but also it's given me the flexibility to be able to be there for her, because she hasn't just got the type 1 diabetes. I'm pretty sure she's on the autistic scale, because my oldest has got Aspergers as well. But it's kind of different with a girl and a boy, it seems to be. So yeah, a lot going on there.
So your boy who's got Aspergers, I can't never remember how to pronounce it. How old is he?
He's 26.
And
yeah.
How old was he when he was diagnosed?
He's not been diagnosed. It was pinpointed at first in nursery. It was pinpointed that if I needed help when he was very young, and because I had issues with his father and that family, they told me that, because I was 17 when I was pregnant, they said that you'll end up having him taken off you. And so I had a lot of fear in me, and they was going to take me to court, so I had all that to deal with back then. And so when the school, the nursery, asked me if I needed help, I said no, because he was very, very wild. I'd wake up and have hot chocolate in my washing machine or vinegar in my kettle. You know, I knew after the second, you know, the other children, he was different. So yeah, he was very wild as a child, but he's progressed now. And when he was then a teenager, it was pointed out in school again, and I went to go down the road, and then he was then turning 17 by the time, because it takes a while to
it's a long time now, isn't it? It's
yeah,
I think it's a good few years before the pandemic. It's even more now, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think they said it was about 2 years. So he decided he didn't want to be diagnosed in work, because he actually works for the tax office, and he's got a good job now. You know, he's done well. And one of his managers mentioned it, because she'd obviously noticed it and said about him getting diagnosed, and he said, "No, I don't need to." And he's got a good job. He's fine. So happy days. You know, he's good.
He's done what he needs to do to get, you know, the purpose of a diagnosis often is to get the support in the education system, isn't it? And if you need support otherwise, to get you to place. But obviously, if he's done that by himself, hats off to him, isn't it? To be fair, you've had a lot, you know, going on in those couple of sentences. Like we've had, like, even when the hospital, your father passed away, so so that was kind of re-traumatizing you going back into hospital setting. So that was like frightening before dealing with your daughter and everything else. And then you've got your eldest son who's got you know, Aspergers. He's got difficulties there. And you're on your own, and you had to give up your work to look after your children. You know, you're like super mum. Like we juggle anyway as single mums. We're like, especially if you're a working single mum, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, but I think everybody has that self-talk, and it's so important to have that self-care and that positive self-talk, because there's so many times I've looked at myself when there's been a crisis with the children, you know, one way or another, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm not a good parent. I think it can be such a common thing to doubt yourself or that kind of thing, but I just keep building a positive mindset and keep growing from it. But I have used a lot of tools to get me there. You know, I went to counselling after trying to hold everything together and breaking down, and thinking I would be there forever. And it was funny because everybody said, don't go to counselling, you don't need to do that. But it was the best thing I did. So I listened to myself and did what was right for me. Yeah. And then the counsellor said, because I thought, oh my God, I'll be here forever. And she said, oh, you only need about 5 sessions. It's because you haven't dealt with it. You just push it to the back of your mind. It's like, oh, I'll get on with that. And then I had an explosion. But she then suggested that I go and learn counselling myself. And that took me on a new journey, which helped me to first help myself and then go on to help other people. And that's why I stay strong, because my focus is on helping other people, not just looking at myself. Because I think if you I know we all go through things, but when you're purely just focused on yourself and what's going on, it can be more difficult, I think, from my perspective. But when you look at the outside world and you try and inspire or share or help somebody in some way, even if it's just a smile, because you don't know what they're going through, then when you do this and you give to someone, I think that builds self-esteem inside you, and it takes the focus off yourself as well, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense, and it really resonates to me, because like you've obviously mentioned, like you've been through domestic abuse, so have I. And if I'd never gone to the domestic abuse charity that I now work for, and gone down that path and seen what they do, and I thought to myself, I'd love to work here one day and do this and help people. I would never have applied for the job when I got made redundant from a different job, which I thought was the end of the world. And then when I saw a job with where I am now, and I got it, and I've been there 3 years now, and I absolutely love it. I work with children, young people, but it's like, it's so rewarding then. So like, it's cathartic as well. It's kind of healing in itself as well, because obviously I went on my own journey like you. I didn't have counselling, but I had like group work with Women's Aid, and I had one-to-one emotional support, which is very similar. And I did my own healing, like self-help books and things online, because I knew that I had to, really face everything, because that's the scariest part, isn't it? When you've been through stuff, the scariest part is acknowledging that you need help and worrying about the stigma, because there still is a stigma. Yeah. And, pushing through that. And it's actually a real brave thing to do. It's the most courageous thing that anybody can ever do, is actually facing your demons and facing your uttermost inner depths of your pain.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, sorry, who's gonna...
No, carry on.
I just thinking back at like reflecting back at a client I worked with, going back a few years back, and this particular client, obviously it's all confidential, but this particular client was in a health condition that more of a mindset really that had caused it, and wanted to just get out and really just be who this person was, and share the authenticity and really shine. And that person is shining and doing some of their own stuff and helping other people now and things like that. But when we began a few years ago, was just in that mindset and just laying in bed all the time. So you can really like transform things just from changing the mindset and definitely going forward. But it's getting that help in the first place, like you said. If it's whether the first point of call is like a GP, a counsellor, a life coach, whatever that is, I think, although it's scary to start it, I think once you start the process and realize how helpful it can be. I mean, I still have coached myself now, because I know how valuable it is. So yeah, I think anyone listening, if you're thinking of whether it's going to law or whether to go to wherever you need to go, wherever that point is, then I definitely suggest just trying it. And you don't know unless you try.
Absolutely. And like you say, the first step is the hardest step, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, even I think like young people, like they spend so much money on looking good. Men and women, you see it, the youngsters, they spend a fortune on the hair and the makeup they buy, and the boys and the brands and everything. They spend a ton of money on their external physical appearance. But I'm wondering, like, what's the mental health? How healthy is that? We need to start treating ourselves. I think the mind is the most powerful thing that we have. Our thoughts are the most powerful thing. And like you said with your client, mindset is everything. Because if you've got this mindset, fixed mindset, that nothing will get better, nothing will improve, my life is a disaster, life is shit, and all the rest of it, then that's the tunnel vision. That's what you're going to have, isn't it?
Yeah. And I just want to touch on what you said there with the mindset of the younger children. I see that. So I think that's such a thing that could really do with changing and helping in that area. And I know like one trick, because my daughter, going back to the diabetes, she showed me a post the one day from some friends that were obviously bullying her, and there was a picture of a bed full of sweets and chocolate bars and everything, saying something like diabetic starter pack, taking the mick out of her and all that kind of stuff. but there is just such a lot out there, but it all does start from within. It's not what you look like on the, it's not the outside, it's internally. And there's so much you can do to help that, whether, there's videos on EFT tapping, very simple things you can do yourself. And when there's a guy called Peter Sage, because I love learning, and he's an amazing, inspirational business guy, but he's got some really great tips. And he says, like, if you just go naked in the mirror, and it's one of the most difficult things you can do if you don't see the beauty in yourself. And every day, just think, I mean, he said 5 things, but if I was saying this to someone else, I'd say start with 3 things, because it's very hard when you first start it. But if you can do that every day, although it may be difficult at first, after a while, you'll start to think, oh, actually, yeah, my hair's not too bad, or my feet are not too bad, or whatever you see in yourself. And how you feel about yourself is how the outside world treats you. And I think when you've gone through so much, the most important thing is like to really feel good about yourself, so you allow other people to treat you well, because that can kind of happen as well, how you allow people to treat you when you go through things as well.
Oh, you were spot on, because it's your self-esteem and it's your confidence. And I work with young people, and some of them sadly are the bullies, and some of them are on the receiving end. They're getting bullied. And when I asked them a question, I was like, show me how you walk. And it's a stupid thing, and nobody's ever taught me to do this, but I just got it in my own head. And they like, show, and I'm like, no. And I'm like, come on. And they're only like 12, 13, whatever. Shoulders back, look someone in the eye. And you know what? Every time it helps them. It's like, they're like, oh, I'm not getting bullied so much. And I'm like, that's because you're taking your power back, and they're like, yeah, and they just like look different. I think when you stand like that, it's just a different persona, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But sorry, going back to that social media post, I mean, that's absolutely disgusting to pick on somebody's illness like that. Like, how dare they?
Yeah, I know. I think that's obviously one of the build up. I don't know what went on altogether, but like I went at that school so much. They saw me coming and they knew I was ready to go in there and say something. I still say things with compassion. I'm not rude, but I will be assertive and make sure things get sorted. But it all comes down to self-esteem, and I think even going to the bullies, I think that like I was bullied from the age of like 4 to the age of 14 myself, and I think the other thing is like helping each other by stepping in each other's shoes. So even the bully has issues, or they wouldn't do it in the first place. It's like having compassion for everybody, and seeing where they're coming from and why they're behaving or acting or being the way they are, because what you don't know what's going on in their life, in their mind, and how they're feeling. So
yeah, absolutely. And I've taught because of work I do, I taught my son that, like, when he says like this person's been, when he's younger, they tell you everything. They are naughty person. When they get teenagers, don't mention it. This person did this in school. And I'm like, well, you don't know what kind of life they've got at home, so you don't know, you can't tell. And then they're like, oh yeah, actually I've heard things about that, but yeah. So your daughter, so what age then did she start taking charge of her own insulin and monitoring it?
Well, she's quite an independent person anyway. She probably got that from me anyway. So she started, a few years ago, really, and she does everything herself now. But obviously, I'm there to monitor her. But she is a very independent person. But it's I think the good thing about it is, or one of the gifts from it all, is that we're still very close. So she'll be very open about many things, and I'll be very open about many things. So, you know, if she is feeling a particular way or whatever, like she's very good at knowing. She'll say, Mum, I'm having a hypo. And we might go into a cafe to, you know, get whatever she needs, some fast acting sugar and maybe something else on top of that. And so she's very good at monitoring it and knowing things herself. Things did change when she went off the injections and onto the pump, but I think that's been a bit difficult for her lately as well, because she's kind of we really fought a long time for the pump because her bloods were that bad, that high. When she was going in for the diabetic appointments, she felt, because she's a very highly sensitive person like I am, and I think she found it difficult because she thought the team, she was taking it personal, was having a go at her. So she found that stressful because she would say things like, well, you know, things are looking good on my injections, on my pump or whatever. And then she'd go in and like the results wasn't the results she thought she would get. And so she would be disappointed in herself then, which I think puts a lot of pressure on her. So I think overall, you know, I think is also the most important thing is to understand someone. Like I am not diabetic, so I can't understand them being diabetic, but I think it's important and essential to understand that a person, if they're in your life, or a child, if they're in your life, how they're feeling about things, because, you know, sometimes they may keep things to themselves and sometimes they might express themselves. But I think what I've learned, having that closer bond, is really essential to find out what's really going on and how they feel, even if it is just going for a diabetes meeting, or how many times if they are doing their bloods. Because I think there's phases where they're like, oh, I just don't want to, you know, she'll go in and she doesn't want to have her feet checked, or she doesn't want to give a sample, and you won't get her to do it. The team will not get her to do it if she decided that. But I think it's this inner thing going on, because I think it's difficult that she's and anybody in that position is something that they've got to deal with, and something that they've got to find their own control around it. And it's something that they can't just say, oh, well, I'm just not going to do it today. You know, it's an ongoing thing. And I think so that understanding and that listening is really important. That's one of the things I would say is so essential with it all.
Yeah, they need that support, isn't it? Because at the end of the human being having a lived experience of this, and nobody else is living that for them.
Yeah.
So the pump, because there's a couple of things I don't know. I know there was a injection, and so what's the pump like? Is it like an asthma type pump, or is it like a pump?
No. So the pump is it's like there's like a little needle, and it's put onto the body, and then it's changed every so often. So there's like a little tube, and that's what the insulin goes to. The pump is very, very clever. It's kind of attached to a piece of the clothing, then the pump is, and you would like put in how many, you can change your ratios and change the information on this, so it's flowing with the amount of insulin that you need, basically. So the difference being, when she was on injection, she'd have something called a fast acting insulin, which she would have like after food, after carbohydrates, things like that. And then she'd have a slow acting insulin. So that would be something that she would have once a day, like in the evening. But it's all different on the pump. So like the pump is kind of regulating how much insulin is going in, and that's continually flowing, rather than doing it with the injection at different times.
So it keeps it more stable. And is the pump inside her body always?
So there's a needle that is placed within the body. They need to be put in different areas each time, because what happens is you kind of get she calls it like an insulin belly lover, which she finds really difficult to get rid of. And basically the insulin stores fat, like as fat, and it's really difficult. It's a lot harder to lose it than if you was just losing it, you know, as normal storage of fat. And so you're really meant to change the position of the needle, because as the insulin goes in, it builds this up. But unfortunately, she's still got bits and pieces. And so that's why you would change the points. Even with injections, you know, you need to change the areas of where you're injecting, where the sites are.
Yeah. And I suppose being 17, a young girl as well, that, you know, you're conscious of your body as well. So does she have, you know, does she get upset at that sometimes then?
Yeah, I mean, she's been experiencing like eating disorders, and
oh gosh,
yeah, it's very, very difficult, because when she was before she was diagnosed, she never really had a big appetite at all. I mean, you know, she ate, but she just never had a big appetite. But the insulin kind of makes her feel hungrier, and so she finds it a lot more difficult to control the eating. Right. You know, it makes her feel hungrier. So yeah, there's that aspect of it.
There's so much diabetes I didn't know, and it's like the term hyper, I didn't even know what that was years ago. I remember I worked in a bank and we had a manager, and he was diabetic, and he could put it through his trousers, like the little clicky needle. And I remember one day I was asking for his help, and he was just pointing at for a customer, and he was just pointing at the computer screen, and he was just pointing, and just like he just was going back and forth like this, and he was repeating. I can't remember what word he was repeating, but he was like repeating something, and it just looked glazed, and he was just staring at the screen, and I was like saying his name, and like no response, and it was really scary. I was like 24 or something, and he was only like late 20s, early 30s, and I was like really afraid. So I told one of my, and then they went and got a chocolate bar for him then. And I remember once our security guy, he had to chase him round to get him to eat the chocolate bar, because he wouldn't eat it. And they were running around at one point upstairs in the offices. So, you know, I laugh about it now, but it was quite worrying. I wouldn't have known what to do. And, you know, so does that happen to your daughter, like they go into like a trance like state, or is it something
different? I mean, it's a 24-hour thing, you know. It can happen anytime, and if the bloods are too low, they basically she runs out of energy, and so, you know, she could get to the point where she's just got no energy at all. And even I found sometimes that, you know, you because they give you in the pharmacy, they give you these like gel things to squeeze in the mouth, because if they get to the point where they've got no energy, they can't have the energy to like chew or eat. But it's kind of like a few times over the years they just haven't gone up, and that's scary as well, because like after like so much, you know, they should start going up, but like they won, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And so yeah, there's many times I've had to take her into hospital and things like that, but mainly it's been where they've been high. But the lows are more kind of in the moment safety issues, if that makes sense, but the highs are more long term. So it's things like she's had a letter now, the last time she had her eyes tested, saying her eyes are going bad, and you know, she's literally just started driving. She started straight away. And the thing is, I heard that this boy was in his early 20s, and he had his license taken off him because he had high bloods, and hers have been so high, like off the scale high for so many times, that is actually the long-term health issues that are the most concerning things with that. But what I found is more than anything, that's one of the reasons I took her out of school, it's the stress that has caused it with her, because you'll go through all the things. It's like, what's she eating? What's this? What's that? And the diabetes team have like almost like put pressure on her, like it's her fault. But what's happened is it seems to be the stress in her body, because I don't think they 100% know. They're still working all these things out, you know. And I think that that's a big factor that puts her blood sugars up, is when she gets stressed. So yeah.
And can I just ask, you mentioned earlier about the checking the feet. So what is the feet check? Because I didn't know about this, sorry. So excuse me ignorance. It's just I don't know, you know. Yes. So what do they need to check the feet for? What do they do?
Well, I'll briefly explain it all. So basically, when you go for a diabetic checkup, when she goes for a diabetic checkup, they'll I mean, she's just gone into the adult unit now, so maybe slightly different, but as a child, when they go in, they take a sample of blood, they take a sample of urine to test it for the you know, the levels. They then like do a measurement, how they're growing, their height, their weight, and all that kind of stuff. They test their feet, because like I said about the long-term health conditions, one of the conditions is, well, two big ones is you can have trouble with the eyes, but also they can have trouble with the feet. So they'll just have a look at the feet to make sure that they're okay, and they can swell. That's another thing that can happen. They can have infections. So for example, being diabetic, it may take longer to heal. So even going to like a female thing, or even going into womanhood or teenager, if you've got something like a personal infection like thrush, that is a very common thing for women. We might not talk about it, but it's a very common thing. But that would be more difficult to get rid of, and it's all linked to the gut. You know, it's all the same thing. So whether it's on the foot, or whether it's somewhere else, it's still that same kind of infection, that yeast infection or a bacterial infection, and it takes a lot longer to go. And so they just do the checkups to make sure the body is healthy, really, more than anything, and obviously making sure that everything is in check, and that's why they go every 3 months for the checkups.
Wow, every 3 months, so they keep a good eye on you then, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're insulin dependent and you don't take it, what can happen to the body then?
Well, basically, I'll just go back to the example, when she was first diagnosed, obviously I didn't know she was diabetic, and because she had no insulin in her body, but obviously that, you know, that disease, that virus that brought it on, that meant that her body, because the pancreas wasn't working, it meant that she needed insulin in the body. Because she didn't have insulin, she obviously, it was a big end case scenario, but she went into a diabetic coma. So I mean, the nurse that saved her life, which I'm so blessed for, she came up after, when she'd started recovering. She's such a beautiful person, to come up to see how she was, and she said she knew a patient that was slightly less on the numbers, and she said, I can't believe she survived. She said it's a miracle. But I did, when I was by her bedside, I'm not religious, but I did, you know, I think we sometimes have these times where we're in crisis, and I just I just broke down, and I was like, please God, you know, I just really want this to, you know, please save her. Because when she was first, I know I'm diverting, but when she was first born, when I was having her, they checked it, because you have the monitor when you're, you know, on the stomach, and it was like, there's no heartbeat. I was like, oh. So they took me into the theatre, and they was just about to put this injection in me, because they was going to do a section to, you know, get her out. And me being as stubborn as I am, I turned around and I said, she's coming, and she wasn't. When she was counting down, I was like, I just can't, I didn't want to do that. So I literally just pushed her out.
Willed her out.
And, you know, obviously she was fine then. So it's kind of like, it was the second scenario that I almost lost her, you know, so it was a big thing. And I think I just kind of surrendered to God that, you know, please, save my baby, you know. And like I said, I'm not religious, but I definitely believe there's a higher power, and
absolutely
believe that the miracles happened then, and I was so blessed. I am so blessed.
And I think many of us have prayed, and even if we don't go to church, whether we refer to it as God, the man in the sky, or whether we say the universe, I sort of refer to it as like a collective universe power, rather than a man with a white beard sitting on a cloud, like most, you know what I mean? So it's like we all have different interpretations, isn't it? And our souls and everything. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, gosh, you've just been through so much, and I know you've had lots of other trauma as well. You know, multiple different things. Like you even saying earlier on, you know, you're a domestic abuse survivor, and I can, you know, and you know, there was all that with your son in the hospital, like the stress of that as well, with trying to, is he okay, you know, is he safe and all that. So there's just so much, isn't there? There's like juggling, you know, with the plates in the circus, they got the spinning plates, like you're just doing all that all the time. And your other child, how are they health-wise? Are they healthy? And
well, my oldest son, he's living on his own. Like I said earlier, he's working in the tax office. He's happy. He likes to be on his own because he's doesn't like the social interaction that much. So I see him, but not often. I give him his space. But he's happy. He's healthy. He's well. My daughter, obviously, the bits that I've already mentioned, she's still struggling with things, but the last couple of days she's been a lot more positive, because she has struggled with things lately, but I'm not going to go into all that with that. But she's definitely getting a lot more positive. My middle son, I'm actually having counselling with him at the moment, because he's been, I think, because of the situation, the living situation with his father, I think that brought up a lot of stuff, because he started having a little bit of therapy, going back a while back with his anxiety. And so, you know, he's currently still working through that. And we're working to rebuild our relationship, because there was stuff that went on there. But he has a successful walking business. He does dog walking, dog training, dog sitting, and he's done that off his own back. So despite what's, you know, their personal scenarios, they've all gone and they've all achieved good things in their life. And I'm like so proud of all of them. You know,
perseverance, and they got you to look after, you know, to look up to rather, because you've persevered yourself. And I think, you know, you've obviously been a fantastic role model for your kids, and showing that, you know, never give up despite anything, isn't it? And you know, you are an inspiration. I think, you know, people listening to this, and I think people watching or listening now to this show will have learned a lot more about diabetes, because I certainly have, you know. And you know, I knew it was dangerous and everything, but you don't think like how, when you said like your daughter, because you don't piece the bits together, like, because you hear diabetes, this person, you know, you don't think, oh, they could actually die from that, you know. And it's like, yeah, especially like children and young people, like we think of it as elderly people, don't we? Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, Nan's had too many cakes or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, gotta watch her with those ice buns and stuff like that. You hear, isn't it?
Yeah, I confess I was totally ignorant, because I was ignorant even to not just the diabetes, to the Aspergers. I was literally, and then this is a time where I thought, oh my God, I must be a bad parent, because I walked through Sainsbury's and I saw this list of things and it said Asperger's. I was like, oh my goodness. that's my son. And that's how I had the realization. I mean, I knew he was different, and goodness, he was like a little monkey. He's so wild. But it's like, yeah, I think the thing is as well is being kind to yourself as a parent, and especially a single parent, because it's like, I think that was the struggle with my son. Like, I was having a conversation the other day, although we've struggled, we're open, and it's like, you know, I was saying to him, I understand you didn't have that male role model to look up to as you grew up, and so he got into his football, and he's very good at football. He was playing for Riska professionally a while back.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, he's, you know, he's very intelligent and all that kind of stuff. But I think he just needed that thing. And so I think we all grow up, and we miss different things from our childhood, or, you know, we all go through something. I don't think there's anyone on the planet that doesn't experience some kind of hardship in some way. But I think it's how we deal with it, and how we move forward away from it, and maybe even go on to help others when we're ready in our own way, if that's our journey.
Yeah, if that's what, you know. Yeah, and I think lots of people in the helping professions, counselling, life coaching, support work, I think lots of people have had lived experience to go for those jobs anyway, because people always say, like, how could you do that? I'd be crying. Even grown men have said to me, oh, I couldn't work with kids, domestic abuse, I'd be crying all the time. But it's not like that. It's not. Kids are very, very resilient, you know what I mean? You know, they're really amazing how they bounce back. But yeah, it's definitely that people are drawn to it. And I said to somebody else who's coming on the show, I think sometimes we do turn out pain into passion, and we are, maybe we're given these experiences by God, the universe, whatever, you know, you believe, to be able to be the helpers to, you know, some people in the world have to be the helpers. It's like, I couldn't be a surgeon or anything with blood and gore, you know. I can watch it on TV, YouTube, whatever, but I couldn't actually do it. And it's like, why are people drawn towards that? And then how are some people drawn towards forensics and working in a morgue and funeral, you know, like, it's obviously like some of us are just guided and meant to do, you know, they say it's a calling, isn't it? Like nursing, I could, you know, and have the patience and everything. So yeah, I definitely believe that. So if you're out there and wondering what to do, and if you're stressed, like, get some help for it, come through the other side, and then really listen to your heart, and like, what is your passion? What are you interested in? Where does your heart say? You know, I've done jobs like sales jobs before, and then at one point it's like, oh my God, it's mind numbing. I just used to like look at the clock, and I'd just be like, couldn't wait to go home, and couldn't wait for the weekend, and just like dread it, you know, just feel so, I used to feel like I was soulless, like there was nothing. And you know, like my job now, like, I know it's hard, you know, working long hours and whatever, but I look forward to Monday. I don't dread a Monday anymore. And I think that's what people, we're only here once, aren't we? We need to get people to find out who they really are, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely been part of my journey as well. Like I said earlier, I've been in so many different roles, and like, if I take a job on because I need to for the sake of it, I know that part of me feels like I'm going backwards, because I know that inherently within me as a person, I know that I get my reward from helping other people. You know, that is me. I don't get my reward from money, but unfortunately we do live in a material money world. So that's been a bit of a challenge there. But you know, I think we, like you said, we've all got you know, that part of us, because I kind of see everybody like a rug, and everybody is one of those stitches, you know. Everyone might be a different stitch, a different color, a different pattern, but we kind of all come together because we've all got a particular job. And I think when people can find that within themselves, and I think one of the best ways of finding that is just by living through joy, just finding the things, even starting with listening to favorite songs or watching, you know, whatever really lights you up. And I think that journey just ends up, you just find it, you just find whatever you're, you know, some people already naturally know, but yeah. Definitely.
I think many people go through a lot, like hit rock bottom and then build themselves back up and then realize what is really important to them and how precious life is. Like when you've gone through things like with your daughter, you know, any kind of tragedy or, you know, abuse or whatever, illness, you know, divorce, anything, or even like mental health, depression, it often like you have to sit back and reevaluate what you want and who you are as a person. And like when you've gone through a healing journey, it's almost like a great awakening within you, a spiritual kind of awakening. It's like you become like a new, it's like you're reborn type of thing. And I suppose people who are religious, sometimes they say born again Christian and all that. I suppose it's like that. It's like a rebirth of you and your soul. And I'm very spiritual like that. And I can safely say that that's something I've been through as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I also think that I mean, I'm going to put a twist on things now, but I also think that every trauma you go through, every crisis you go through is also like a part of a transformation. And maybe if we perceive things as like, sometimes we might perceive things as dark and like, that's like the shadow side of things, because that's like the negative side of things. But what if you opened your mind and thought, well, actually, maybe that was actually the light, because that like broke me open, changed me, transformed me, and took me where I was meant to go. So how do you know that's not actually the light? You know, everything can change with your perception and the mindset and everything, you know.
I'm with you there 100%. And it's like, if you look back at life, you know, we hear the cliche, everything happens for a reason, but it's like it does. So when you actually look back, it's like, I said on a different show about me getting cancer, but then having cancer, then changing my outlook at 19, I went abroad to be a holiday rep for a few years. I went from the worst time of my life to like the best few years of my life, right? And then I had depression I've had depression a few times. I'm quite open about that, and anxiety. And after that, I then went to university to do my degree. So it's like, you know, terrible time. It pushed me to the best time. So yeah, so we need to look for, I always say, look for the blessing and the lesson. It's a bit cheap, but look for the blessing in every situation. I mean, it's hard, like, you know, if someone's died, or I'm not saying that, like, oh, you've got to find the blessing. You're not going to in that. But in other things, you know, look for the lesson, like what's the universe, what's God, what's our creator trying to teach us? If a relationship has ended, what's that trying to teach you? You know, like with your one, after finding out about your daughter, what was the lesson in that? What type of person would he have been? Did you find out sooner? If you've been with him, maybe he wasn't supportive enough, you know. You could have got married, or then you might have had a divorce. So it's like things like that, you know. So
and I think, like you said, when you start looking, you just find so many more, and then you just automatically have all these insights as you're going through life and learning things about yourself and others. And I think every experience that you have that every client, you know, you can help even more clients, because the more experiences you have, the more clients you can like relate to and understand from their shoes, their point of view then. But I think the other way of looking at it is like you mentioned, the depression, and I've been depressed so many times, you know. I like, if people see me, they see me as this most positive person, and they feel so much better after me. But I actually isolate myself and get depressed every now and again, you know. It happens, because I'm human. And I think one of the things is like just making sure that you do spiral back out of there yourself, or you get that support. Because I think when you do isolate yourself, it kind of, it doesn't, I know you can't help it because sometimes you're in a process or with grief, you know, that there is a time to that coming out of it. But I think like the sooner you can kind of get back at that spiral going upward, and maybe look at it as contrast, and just kind of think, well, this is something that I'm looking at, that I'm accepting, I'm dealing with at the moment, but I'm accepting that although I'm here now, maybe this is not what I want. So I'm grateful for this depression or whatever it is, or grief or whatever that's come into my life, because it's teaching me the opposite is actually what I want. I want happiness, I want freedom, I want love, whatever that is. So it's like, look at seeing the contrast and then finding the beauty in what the opposite would be. You know?
You into law of attraction, Julie, when you're speaking of contrast.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I love that.
I knew when you said contrast, that's like a term in law of attraction. So to look at everything, you know, that negative happens, don't think it's a bad thing. It's just contrast. It's teaching us a lesson. What's the blessing in it? And like make it, you know, look, analyze, step out of the box and analyze a bit different. And another great thing, I'm going to give a tip now, is like switch off that news with a constant, yes, it's sad what's going on in the world elsewhere and all the rest of it, but we don't need to hear it all the time. It brings people down. You need to look inside yourself. Stop watching so much TV, reading newspapers, magazines. Start to look within yourself and what's your heart center? What do you like? What can you change? How can you make this one life, you know, joyous and purposeful, isn't it? Like, because we're one life and we don't know, you know, when that ends. So we have to.
I totally agree with you. Do you know, I probably haven't watched the news for like 20 years. It might have been caught here, there and everywhere, but I focus on learning things, like, you know, because I think one of the things I'm learning at the moment is like, rather than focusing on a problem that's going on, like how many solutions can you find? How many solutions, you know, like you could ask yourself, say you're in a financial situation. So why am I in this financial situation? And mark down as many things as you can, or whatever the situation is, and then going on from there, it's like, how can I get myself out of that? And you'd be surprised how many solutions might pop up, and you could do it with anything, you know?
Absolutely. Don't sit there ignoring the debt calls and the red letters. And I myself, I've gone through bankruptcy. I might leave that to another episode, you know, but after a divorce, I had to do that. And people think of that as the worst thing in your life. And yeah, it did affect me for 6, 7 years, 8 years, 10, you know. But I've rebuilt my credit now and life moves on. Right, little golden nugget of advice now for the end. We've gone a bit over. What would you advise, maybe related to diabetes as a parent? How do you keep going as a parent and to be supportive?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, because I think it's so essential and important. I think especially if the child is turning into a teenager, because it is hard, or they're going through a hard time themselves, it's like, try and be present in the moment, like try and be mindful as you can, so you're really in that space and really listening, really being there for them, so they're feeling that you're there and you're really showing that you really are willing to understand how they are at this time, and just being there for them, and just in whatever way it is for them, because everybody communicates and accepts love in a different way, but whatever that is for your child, whether it's spending time, whether it's listening to them, whether it's giving them a hug, making sure that they're fully understood and growing that bond, and knowing as a parent that no matter what thoughts are going through your head, you're doing the best that you can at this specific time, and always remembering that, give yourself that self-love and care, because when you care and nurture yourself, if you imagine, like, I'm going a bit airy-fairy now, but if you imagine like a stone on a going onto a pond and it ripples out. If you imagine our energy like this, or our feelings and emotions, if we're in a happy place and we're vibrating those waves out, then we're doing this to our children. So if we're in a good caring space for ourselves, we can be more present for them as well. So it's about them. It's about them, and obviously caring for yourself.
And I'm all airy fairy, I don't care what you want to call it. It's the law of attraction, it's your energy, it's rippling out, and what goes out comes back, isn't it? So the more positive we are. But I always say, like, there's a joke, in a happy wife, happy life, happy mum, isn't it? Like, you know, like, if mum's happy or your wife's happy, then you're gonna all be happy. Right, we've gone to 8 minutes past. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been great to have you, and I've learned so much as well. So thank you so much. Good night and God bless, and have a wonderful evening. Take care. Thank you, Julie.
Bye.
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 Bye.